So I think we can begin, and welcome to everyone who has taken time to attend this session. Uh, Even after it is the Dashera, I completely forgot that it is Dashera when we decided we are going to do this session. But I mean, as now as we are doing it, I mean, I'm thankful to everyone who has joined it. The I mean, just give me a sec. So what we are going to do as part of the conversation today is we will discuss the importance of the agile testing in the agile world, actually, because people may be having a clarity around what generally really happen when a developer works in agile, but then as far as the quality is concerned and the work related to the tester is concerned, that becomes a little bit unclear to the people. So this is what we're going to discuss as part of this conversation. Just give me a sec. Actually, I'm just trying to see if the slideshow works pretty well. Just give me a sec. Okay. I hope it is visible pretty, I mean, pretty okay now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear.
Okay, cool. So a little bit about me. So I am Shrikant Vasisht, and on the jalpur.com for quite some time. And I have been focusing on agile testing, continuous delivery, specification, for example, user story, DevOps, lean startup, all these practices from agile world. So if we look at I mean, this quadrant, which we generally people look at from the agile testing point of view, is given in the Agile Testing book written by Lisa Crispin and Brian Marick. If you look at it, you find that uh, I mean, the focus here in this quadrant is that uh, I mean, uh, on the lower side, you have completely automated testings, which are around unit testing and the component test. As you move up on the left hand side again, you find that there is a focus around automated and manual testing. So as you see that the y-axis is towards supporting the team, and axis is towards technology facing. So you see that in the automated and manual quadrant, you find there is a focus around the functional tests, examples, uh, story tests, prototypes, and simulations. And in the quadrant 3, which is more manual, the focus is around the exploratory testing scenarios, usability testing, user acceptance testing, alpha, beta. Uh, and then in the quadrant 4, which is completely technical and tool based, is where the focus is on the performance and load testing comes into picture, security testing, and any other LET related testing. When I say LET related testing, I'm talking about non-functional requirement related testings. So when I mean, so if you with these quadrants, what you look at it like, what is the kind of scope of testing as a whole in agile? And I mean, and you can also understand that some of those things you may be doing already, and some of these things we may not be doing. I mean, we may be doing very infrequently. So, for example, performance test or load testing, and usability testing. So you find that what it can be a kind of scope of from a testing standpoint overall in Agile. So these quadrants were part of the book, the Agile Testing, and in between there have been uh, a lot of advancements or I mean a build-up of understanding around what is important from the testing point of view. Um, some of the ideas from the lean startup world came into the picture. Uh, some of the ideas from the DevOps, and then what you see is that there is, I mean, you find a change in these quadrants, and this is a kind of perspective of Gojko Adzik, who has been a writer of specification by example book, and he has been a writer of impact mapping and a renowned name in the Agile world. So what he focused here is that these quadrants can be divided in terms of the technology, business, check for expected outputs, and then analyze undefined, unknown, and unexpected things. So if you see on the left hand side, you find uh, lower quadrant, which is around the quite known things from the automated unit testing standpoint. So it is all about unit test-driven development, integration, uh, data formats, APIs, and compatibility. If you go up here, it is around the specification by example, performance, compliance, regression, hypothesis. And then on the right hand side, you find the exploratory testing, usability testing, stakeholder impact. Some of the changes which have been adopted over here is that they have introduced the idea of A/B testing over here, usage analytics. So some of those things which are unknown, trying to find them uh, based on the experiments and trying to see whether some of those things are working or not. As far as the A/B testing is concerned, it's all about after you, there can be two versions of the same thing, and then when you deploy those two versions and trying to see whether which version is working well for you. So based on that, you decide which version will be going to the production. So that is A/B testing. And then this is about the load testing, penetration testing, production trends, and smoke tests. So all these things are basically, as you see, that analyze undefined and unknown uh, and unexpected things. So this is also a kind of another perspective from the testing triangle point of view, actually, from Gojko. So with this, I was just trying to give you a perspective, like what all, when we talk about the testing, then what all things are included as part of it. And before we try to understand what the agile testing is all about, let's try to understand uh, how it had been working before. Because why we are discussing the waterfall or a traditional approach is because irrespective of whether we are working in agile or I mean using Scrum or anything else, people continue to have that same mindset in traditional mindset, even in while working in agile and Scrum as well. So it is important to understand that mindset, and because then we need to see like whether that is still continued when you are working in agile, fine. So in traditional approach, what was happening was that it was all about the phases, and requirements were happening initially, then analysis, then coding with testing and deployment. So in that scenario, uh, what could be happening was that uh, the tester may be joining the game actually pretty late. Business analyst might have started initially, and then after coding is done, many testers may be joining the cycle, and with that, there is a chance that they may not be having a good amount of understanding what has happened in between. And that was the reason actually people used to create a lot of documentation, because people used to join different phases and their understanding about the project was limited to those phases only. Fine. So when, and then because of that, people used to focus on only around what they were supposed to do, but not very clear about the goal, how they're contributing towards the goal of the project, or the outcome produced by that effort actually. So in the waterfall approach, you could also see that the cost of change used to be very high. And I mean, in case you are changing at the very beginning, then the cost of change was low. But then as you move towards the time and you are basically, for example, making a change while you are deploying, then the cost of change was used to be very high. When you think from the testing standpoint, uh, because we were thinking a lot around a big delta, that because big scope used to be defined as part of the specification and then development, and because that large delta can never be estimated properly, so because of that there used to be push from the specification point of view to the development, and then from the development standpoint to the testing. So uh, and the important thing to understand is that I mean, this whole idea of the quality used to be focused only in the testing part, actually testing phase. So uh, so because you see that the timelines are already stretched by the specification by and development, and then when you are in the testing phase, then it used to be a lot of struggle for the people. uh, Many times you could see that functionality may not even be working, because people just think that the testing will be taken care by the testers, and their role is just to create the functionality. So because of that, there used to be a lot of stress from the testing point of view. There used to be a lot of back and forth to the development and to the testing, and some night outs, and then eventually you would find that some way there used to be some kind of compromise in terms of the quality, and some of those things used to go into the production, and then you find the problems in the production and then start fixing them. So this was a kind of typical approach which was happening before. Now if so one of the important principle of continuous integration is that if it is hard to do something, you are not doing it often enough, and the same principle you can apply almost anywhere. So generally, even though continuous integration is a practice which we may be using, but I generally call it as is it as a philosophy, that because um, in case you are doing something once in a while, then you are going to face a lot of problems. But if you start doing the same thing which is troubling you actually uh, multiple times, and so many times that it becomes a no-brainer. I mean, from that standpoint, and most of the things are automated. So that is the point actually. You start dividing the big delta into the smaller deltas and start doing it more frequently, and then that task which used to create a lot of problem to you, then it becomes no brainer. So uh, So with this, one of the corollary of this point is that if data is small, so is the risk. Um, so that the same thing people started applying in the agile software development as well, and that's where the idea of the smaller iteration came into picture. There have been a lot of advantages of using iterative approaches. One of them is to get the, I mean, go to the, is able to go to the customer, because actual value happens only when the customer actually uses it. Before that, you may show, I mean, think about a situation where you may be showing different ideas to the customer. You may, I mean, in whatever way you can think. So you can show a 2D picture, you can show 3D picture, but actually the customer will be able to understand what it is only when he starts using it. So I'll give you one example around that. So let's say that if we, I mean, you are trying to explain what it is all about to eat a banana, and or how to what to experience and how to eat the banana and how it looks like. So you can show all the pictures, you can show all the 3D 2D or videos around it, but the kind of experience you have when you have it in front of you and then you eat it, is you, that experience cannot be replaced by anything else. So before that, anything else is just a kind of awareness. You experience it when you start using it. So similar thing happens from the software standpoint. So in case you're going to the customer very late in the game, then you may be losing opportunity to get his feedback whether he liked it or not, and make the changes accordingly. So these smaller iterations helps you or provide that opportunity to the team to, so that they can go back on their seat and come and then apply the feedback which is coming based on the way he has started using it. So the idea is that you go to the customer as soon as possible. Before that, anything and everything you're creating is an inventory, nothing else. Fine. And inventory has a associated cost around it when it is just lying there and nobody's using it. So apart from that idea of getting the feedback faster from the customer, this idea helps in dividing the risk as well, because you see that the delta is small now. Instead of the delta of 6 months, now you may be shaping products in terms of the two weeks. Oh, sorry, you may be shaping the features in 2 weeks. Deploy, I mean, creating things end to end, and so that way. And then based on the experience, you again shape the product further actually. And so what happens is that your product becomes more outcome focused, based on the experience of the customer, instead of just churning out the features which may be having a kind of uh, problem where when, or a kind of risk that nobody is using it. So in that sense actually, that risk of having all, I mean, the idea of the having the risk towards the end, the large amount of risk which we showed in the previous slide actually here. So you see that the risk is very high towards the end. uh, in the iterative approach, that becomes quite lower. Fine. So this is how it looks like. So the cost of change happens to be low around the time, and that is applicable to the quality as well, to the testing as well. So instead of doing the testing at the very end, you keep doing the testing uh, in each iteration. But you see, I mean, that the problem which we discussed in the previous slide, I mean this one actually, where the tester may be facing a lot of pressure towards the end, continue to be there even in the Scrum world. So we will try to we will discuss about it, like how to avoid that kind of situation even in Scrum approach. Um, but with this, I just want to make sure that we need to acknowledge that this problem of having testers in under pressure continues to be there even in the Scrum, or I would say that the wrong way of doing the Scrum. Fine. So we will see in the coming slides like how to fix this problem from that standpoint. Now, what we are trying to see uh, here is what to expect in Agile from the tester standpoint. So let's say that my mindset has been in the same way that the tester are supposed to do the testing at the end of the work at the end of the coding. So what is expected from a tester standpoint uh, uh, when you move in Agile? Fine. Uh, so so one thing is that waterfall mindset or the traditional mindset happen to be in working in silos. So uh, somebody will create the requirements, I mean, throw it over the fence to the development, then developers throw it over the fence to the testers. And sometimes you will find that there are different departments from the development tester standpoint. Testers may be sitting somewhere else and developers may be sitting somewhere else. So so with that, actually what generally happens is that with this whole idea of this of working over the fence is that there is a probability of a coming to a dysfunction where uh, which in the Peter Sengi's ways which has been explained in his book Fifth Discipline uh, is I am my position dysfunction. So the dysfunction name is I am my position. The 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 dysfunction is all about like this guy who is doing the dollar testing. He maybe just focused about around the work he's supposed to do, and any problems he may be facing will be around the testing issues only. And and there is a good amount of reason why it really happens actually. uh, and the reason is that this guy cannot see actually the world of the developers. uh, and even if he sees, he feels that he is not responsible to do anything around it. His responsibility is towards his own world, which is the testing world, and only thing he should worry about is that to fix that. So in this situation, there may be scenarios where tester may be saying that developers I mean keeps I mean give us the work towards the very end, and when they give us, then there are a lot of issues. Uh, we may be having a lot of back and forth in getting the work tested, and then doing the regression, and then doing it again, kind of stuff. So that may be the complaint testers may be having. Similarly, developers may be having the complaint from the BAs that these guys give us the requirement, keeps on changing the requirement till the very end, and actually uh, that gives puts us in a under a pressure situation, and where we are not able to start developing at I mean till the very end. And so that is their perspective. These people who are working with the customer may have another problem, which they may be saying that in our world we are working with a customer who is maybe a startup, for example, and then their process is still evolving, so they are still shaping their requirements. So we are struggling to shape the requirements as of now. So everybody may be having their problems from their own world, but they in the entirety they don't have any clue whether, first of all, the problems of other world, number one, and second thing, if they can do anything around to solve the problems of other world. So for example, in this case of the tester, actually, uh, I mean, he may be seeing that he is getting the build which keeps on breaking, but he may not be having any clue, or he may not be thinking whether he should, if he can help the developers in preventing those problems to happen. Fine, but having said that, what I'm trying to say is all those problems are happening because the way the teams are structured. When you structure the teams in based on the department, these problems are bound to happen. Fine. So it is not just in the waterfall world, any kind of teams which are divided in terms of different departments bound to have these kind of problems. Fine. So we will see like what kind of changes the agile brings here in this case, and how the tester's perspective is going to change when they break these boundaries. So when they start breaking these fences, then what all changes really happen, and then how it really works, right? So so this phenomena of working in the silos create this situation where focus is around the clashes around we versus they. These are the few instances from the testing standpoint. It looks like to the developer that this guy is just trying to raise a bug, and he just focused around that. He's, I mean, and he may be in a difficult situation. Uh, so instead of that, what is happening is agile mindset is basically I mean, agile mindset is all about one team and one mission. And with that, what generally happens is it starts breaking these boundaries, uh, and people whoever were working earlier over the fences start working together. When they start working together, then they find this, first of all, they start understanding the world of the other person as well. uh, and another thing which generally happens is that uh, they find that I mean, because the goal of a sprint is to deliver the sprint goal. So in case they continue to work in their own world, testing world or development world, then it is not really sufficient. So for example, development is done in your view, uh, but the testing is not done, then the customer will not be satisfied. Fine, because he's not really looking for the partial work, but he's looking for the entire increment which is working well together. But the problem is that even after moving to these this I mean world where the fences are already broken, these team members continue to work in that fashion again. They continue to see their work, I mean, their work from that angle. They feel that my work as a developer was done, but this guy tester didn't do it, so I don't care. I mean, that is not my problem. Actually, this is his problem. And that is where what I'm trying to say is that uh, I mean, that mindset which happened to be part of the waterfall continue to be there in the Scrum world as well. Fine. But as soon as you start breaking that mindset and trying to see the opportunities, how you can help each other, so that you should be able to meet the sprint goal in a better way, then things starts happening in a much better way. Fine. So we will discuss like how a tester, for example, should be able to help the developer, or a developer should be able to help the tester. So we will see those scenarios, because so far you could see that this is my world as a tester, this is his world, and or this is my world as a developer, and this is his world. So that doesn't really, I mean, even though that that mindset continue to be there in the traditional way, that doesn't really help anybody, right? So another thing which generally happens is that and I'm just trying to tell you the reason of this thing. So let me just show you again the problem. So we are coming back to this problem again. Fine. So the problem was again that I'm working in a Scrum world, and still I am facing the problems that testers are given very less time to do the testing actually. Fine. So it's a difficult, so irrespective of whether we have reduced the timelines for time boxes in Scrum from 6 months to 2 weeks or 1 week, I still continue to face the problem. Fine. So let's try to see why this problem happened in the first place. Okay. uh, so first of all, let's try to understand that I mean, what Scrum is actually. Generally, people feel that the Scrum is all about having certain roles. So 3 roles for ceremonies, and similarly 4 events, and then different ideas about the artifact transparency. So as long as you are working in that fashion, then you are using Scrum, you are doing Scrum. But with that idea that we are working in a time box, and then there are some roles with, and we are working around a time box, and this is all a Scrum, we may be having a um, we may be having a difficult understanding around what Scrum is all about. So if you see in this picture, you will find that Scrum is all about work. I mean, this picture shows that the Scrum has been taken from the rugby world, and if you see that these guys are working together, and basically uh, going back and forth with the ball, and uh, uh, and then going towards one goal as a team. So that is the idea you see with this picture. So all these people are really working together towards one common goal. On the other hand, when we start moving to the software world, what we see is that people continue to work in the siloed way. So for example, if there are 4 developers, they continue to take one stories, and then start working on their own actually. So with that, there is no collaboration. They are not working together towards one common goal. There is no, I mean, there is no interaction between them, and that causes problems. That causes a lot of problem actually, right? So that is where uh, that is what basically is called the swim lane based Scrum, in which the all the team members take one PBI, start working on it in this and in parallel. So you will be having a big whip around it, and but nothing. So things, lots of things in progress, but nothing is moving to done. So instead of that, the idea is that in case this team starts working together, that means instead of one person working on one story, what if multiple people start working on one story? So in that case, what will happen is the work which is supposed to be finished in 3 or 4 days, uh, and because by one person, and now 3 or 4 people are working together now, uh, that same work may be finished in 1 or 2 days, for example. When that work finishes faster, then it moves to the testing cycle faster as well. So that is very important to understand, that instead of having too many things in progress, if we start thinking about finishing things faster actually as a team, then you will find that instead of taking a lot of things in progress, you will be taking 1 or 2 items, finishing them faster from the development standpoint, and that way it will be moving to the tester faster. So that is a very important idea in case we want to avoid a situation where testers are feeling under crunch all the time. Fine. So another change which generally happens in the testing world is, or the agile world, is that the focus happens to be from the manual regression to the test automation. And there is a reason around it why it happens. And the reason is that, uh, I mean, from each sprint you are shaping, actually there will be a lot of test cases around it. So for example, let's say that each sprint creates, with each sprint you comes out with 100 test cases. Now after 10 sprints you may be having a situation where you may be having 1,000 test cases. Now for a couple of sprints you should be able to do the manual regression, but when you start moving towards the 10th iteration or 20th sprint, actually, then you may be losing the track, actually, and manual regression is no more sufficient. Either you need to add the number of people in the testing, or you start doing the automation of the regression. So it is very, very important idea to understand that if you want to maintain the similar kind of pace which we had in the beginning, actually, or we want to sustain it. So in that standpoint, it is important that we start moving towards test automation. So, and having said that about test automation is not just the responsibility uh, of the tester, but it is the responsibility of the entire team, which we will focus later in the slides. Another thing which generally happens, which is the kind of change from the tester standpoint, uh, is that the estimation happens to be uh, as part of one team. So there may be a lot of misconceptions in the people that they may be doing even if they are doing the planning poker, they may be doing the story point estimation separately as a developers and testers. So that kind of thing doesn't really exist in Scrum, actually, or because the whole estimation has to be done as one team. So developers and testers have to do the story point estimation together. And the idea is that uh, the whole idea of this planning poker estimation approach is to have a shared understanding about what and how things needs to be done. And you need to and that shared understanding can happen only when there are more people on board who are able to speak about their perspective around that story. So for example, somebody is saying that for this story we need to just make a change of one line code change, actually. But if when the tester is sitting over there, he may say that even though it is a one liner change, but you see that this one liner is going to create I mean is going to impact the regression of which is going to take more than 8-9 days, actually. So that kind of inputs people should be able to get when they discuss it together instead of separately. Similarly, another situation which happens from the testing standpoint is that a tester may be saying that this is requires a lot of testing, and I may be struggling in the automation front. So this may require more time from my side, actually. So developer may say that I should be able to help you in the automation part, or writing for the code around it, and that way it will take a lot less time, actually. We can automate this stuff, for example. So that kind of discussion or the collaboration or can happen only when people start discussing this estimation together. and that can never happen when they are doing it separately, right? So that is another point which generally happens to be part of this the agile teams. Another important point, which is a kind of in the contrast to the traditional world, is moving from testers as the last line of defense uh, to the continuous focus on the quality from everyone. Uh, so earlier, the testers were the only one who were focused towards identifying the problems or focusing around the quality, and anything if anything goes behind them, actually, that may be going into the production straight, actually. So that's why I was saying that the testers were last line of defense. But now, because but in the agile, actually, the the focus of the quality has to happen from everyone, and everyone is supposed to test, actually, from that standpoint. uh, so let's also try to see what I mean so far what we have seen is that what all changes have really happened in agile from the tester standpoint. Let's try to see what could be a potential role of the tester in an agile project. And I mean, from the mindset standpoint, what are the different things which are supposed to change uh, for a tester, fine. So so this is a typical card wall in an agile project. So you see to do, in progress, and done. And uh, this is where actually uh, I mean, the wall from the product owner standpoint is there. So you see that there are these are the stories which may be happening in the next sprint, then stories in next sprint, and then next third sprint, actually. So you may be having a kind of a product backlog of next three sprints through this wall, actually, fine. And here you see the ready stories. One other thing which you see is that you don't have any other. You may be having a column for the in progress, but you don't have the columns like in development, in QA, and stuff like that. So the and this is important to understand. The important idea over here is that anything which is not done is in progress. So whether it is not in progress because of testing reason or the development reason or from any other reason, the story is in progress. And if something is in progress, it is not done. So the whole team has to make sure that they are working together, collaborating, and making sure that this story is really moved to done. When if it doesn't really matter whose effort is it is supposed to be, fine. But as soon as you start dividing this in progress column uh, to in development and in testing, you will find that, oh, I mean, my part as a developer is done. This is the tester part, actually, that he's just supposed to do. So you start having the silos within your team, actually, because of just having these number of columns. So it is important recommendation. So as and when you are working in Scrum, try to make sure that you just have one single in progress column instead of multiple columns, which may look nice, actually, on the board, but creates more problem than it solves, actually. So you may be having the subtask around each stories, which have been mentioned like in the stickies over here. uh, and you can mention like what all work we are doing together, but then there should be one column around it. This is another point, and important to understand how it changes the way testers really think. So earlier I was saying that in the traditional world, it is very difficult to understand. Uh, uh, I mean, because I can just think about my own position. So I may not be able to think if I'm ever be able to help the developers, uh, and developers should be able to help us So that really never happens. But when you start breaking these boundaries where uh, everybody is really working as part of one team and everybody is team member, one of the important thing to understand in Scrum is that there is no dev team or the QA team. So it has to be highlighted 100 times more that there is no dev team, QA team in Scrum. Everybody is team member. So as so if so we so when that everybody is team member, every team member has to make sure that how he is contributing towards moving a per backlog item to done actually. So it doesn't really matter whether it is a job of the developer or tester. Doesn't I mean, so that is not a big deal over here. So one of the thing in that context, if you try to understand, how a tester role really changes from the traditional world to the agile world, you see that earlier the role of the tester was to find as many as defects as you can actually, and then asking the developers to fix that. If a developer or a tester is finding hundreds of bugs, then he's a best tester. Otherwise, he's not, for example. So that was a kind of KPIs around tester. But now this whole situation is changes in the agile world, because if you think about it carefully, then any identified bug is a waste. Think about the cycle, the way it goes actually in it. So when you start creating, so you may be shaping your code based on the functional requirements as a developer. Based on that, uh, you may be as soon as that part is done, and you may be writing the test cases around it, then you may be moving it to the source repository. uh, from the source repository, there may be a continuous integration server which may be running, which may be polling the code changes which are happening in your source repository. Based on the changes happened, just what the developer pushed into the repository, the CI build will be triggered, and it will create an automated build. Based on the build, it will be creating a binary which may be having the option for a tester whether he can deploy it on testing environment or not. If a tester chooses to deploy that build in the testing environment, then he need to set up the testing data around it, reference data around it, and after he is done with that, then he start testing, and then he will find that, to his surprise, that the basic flow itself is not working fine. So, and then he log that bug into the uh, into the bug logging system actually, and then developers start working on it, and then this cycle repeats again, and then test it again. So this, you see that this whole cycle is waste of time actually. What if we could avoid it in the first place? And that is the basic idea over here. So how to avoid that situation? So this situation can be avoided uh, to to so that can be avoided when we start preventing the bugs to even happening in the first place. Again, that can happen. uh, I mean, first of all, let's try to understand why these number of bugs really happen. Many times it happens that the developers may not be having much idea about the test scenarios. So they may be thinking about their test scenarios in the isolation. So whatever test scenarios they could think of in isolation, based on that, they shape the code and then move it to the tester. Instead of that, in case the tester, I mean, before you write a single line of code of a user story, the developers and testers start sitting together and then discuss out all the test scenarios for that story. So you may not discuss, you may not immediately find out all the test scenarios, but you may be having enough test scenarios for a developer to start with. in the first hour, for example, and then developer can start working on it. In the meantime, testers can find out more scenarios and then discuss it out with the developer. So the point with this kind of conversation and the collaboration is to find all the test scenarios before you can start developing on it. Uh, and in that scenario, a developer can also contribute with his own thoughts. While these guys discuss that out, they also find out uh, that which test scenarios or which test cases will be automated when, whether the test cases will be automated at the unit testing level or the integration level or the functional testing level. So that discussion also happens between the developer and tester. And after that, developer has a pretty clear idea that when what is his condition when he moves out from the developers. I mean, when he says that my coding is done actually. So when you consider all these test scenarios and you give the code which satisfies them actually, then you will be reducing a lot many bugs in the testing cycle. Sometimes, and the idea is should be like you should not be able to find a single bug as part of it. Fine. So another thing which can happen is that whenever developer says that my part is done, he can ask the tester to come on his machine and ask him to look at if everything is fine from the sanity standpoint, in case if he could find some problem which he may not be able to think, for example. So in that scenario, tester can find out some of the testing some of the problems actually immediately before they move to the test environment. So that way some of the problems can be fixed. I mean, it may happen that developers has fixed some part of it. I mean, his feature is really working, but from the regression standpoint, something else is broken, or which may not be really clear in the continuous integration and continuous integration automated test for some reason, but tester is able to find it, and then those things can be fixed then and there instead of very late in the game. Fine. Uh, so this was an important thing to understand from the agile point of view, is that uh, we we need to focus on the stop starting and start finishing. So so with this idea, what we are trying to say is that it is not good to always thinking to create one more item in the work in progress, but it is important to think how to finish one which is already in progress. Fine. So that is one thing which everybody in the team needs to keep in mind as part of it. Uh, Another thing which the tester can really help is helping the PO or the product owner in achieving the definition of ready. So just to make sure that product owner is accountable in shaping the product backlog items, but he can take help from the development team to shape those product backlog items. So many times the tester should be able to help in that fashion, because he may be having the understanding of the entire product as a whole, because sometimes maybe the developers may be having a siloed view of the features they may be working upon, but tester has to think things in its entirety actually, and that's where he can help in the product owner in shaping the product backlog items, and can help in achieving the definition ready. Uh, and then he can also be a gateway to definition. But we are not saying that he's a gate, but basically he can help the team in moving things to done actually. So that maybe is one of the roles actually as part of agile testing. So considering the amount of time we have, so I would like to just stop over here, because there may be a lot of things, other things we can discuss, but I think from the time point of view, we are this may be sufficient idea to munch upon so far. And with that, actually, um, I'm available for the questions, the rest of the people.
Hi, Srikanth, I posted a question. I think you answered a bit of it. Can you explain more on this? How effectively actually we can engage testers during the initial phases itself? Any strategies as such?
Okay, how effective effectively we should engage testers in the initial state of the development?
Cannot be development well beyond that, before that also.
I mean, one of the important idea before development is the backlog refinement, and backlog refinement is all about making sure that as a team we really understand what this product backlog item is all about, first of all, and there is no unanswered question which may be remaining, which could block us when we start moving, when we move to the sprint actually. Fine. So that may be the focus of the backlog refinement, that when the backlog item really moves to the sprint, we should be having all the relevant information to move it to done. Many times it doesn't really happen because of many reasons. Sometimes maybe we just the product owner is not able to give enough time, or whatever may be the reason. So that's where tester may help. And while doing that, it is important to come out with the relevant questions, number one. Second is uh, identifying the acceptance scenarios. So acceptance scenarios can be identified as a team, as again, uh, and those acceptance scenarios can be identified based using examples, because anything which is vague cannot be understood by the team. So whenever you think about we need to identify the acceptance criteria, then think in terms of the examples, using examples, and that's where again tester should be able to help actually. And Yeah, I mean, just to make sure that sometimes we feel that the tester is just focused around the testing, the I mean, checking whether the functionality which we have implemented is really working or not. But that is not the point actually, because that may be thing actually which may be happening in the first place already anyways. So when you start preventing the bugs to even happen, then tester may find opportunity to work on the better things, for example. So initially in the part of the webinar, I mentioned about the entire testing scope actually, in the testing quadrangle actually. And Many times the testers are limited just to do the functionality testing. When this functionality testing starts happening on its own, and you find zero or limited number of bugs, then testers can focus on better things. They can focus on the exploratory testing, they can focus on the A/B testing, they can focus on the non-functional requirement based testing. So all those things, all those doors are opened as soon as I mean, this functionality related problem is resolved, because most of the times otherwise it happens that they are just focused around making sure that functionality itself is working or not.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks, Srikanth.
Yeah.